Sangaya Namo Guru Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sangaya Namo Guru Namo Buddhaya Namo Dharmaya Namo Sangaya Gandela Jagenge Toka Rakara Josaya Ponte Chodze Chege Gebo Kinge Lozan Sedan Cheboy Nedre Sheso Denge Anam Sende Bede De Jeze Lama Gebe Zonkara Daloe Debe Sanaim Shincho Tembo Jeje Keljae Jozo Jeje Jengi Jeve Lodendo Kezae Nave Oleshe Dove Beke Lame Zebe Godonde Dembe Dende Lachan Ye Ye Nazo Medo Dande Shen Dobe Nanse Desha Mo Sham Yete Chete Jazo Desena Em Shen Choi Chela Cheba Ganshe Tome Dene Saba Yelunga Yesu Mege Jiji Yavara Tombo Sumge Meten Jonine Jabaya Tabe Sosro Nime and Dre Monde Dubla Chege Pambe Denjo in the Gombo Kege La Jen Zeba La Daja Sambaya Tabe Yira Jeze La Maya Damba Kena Chego Kala Chense Tente Ne Jedra Zambe Denje Zema Saje Chege Chaba Abdul Namda Yeze Yende Shemba Ye Sonjo Kolo Chano Minga Tame Nango Sobo Rabba Jesede Bardo Meno Dempa Dage Jenya Sabe Gewa De Dendayan Joa Kunla Gambe Lozan Daba Tembe Nimbo Rendo Seje Mime Zeve Deje Jere Zedime Kimbe Wombo Jampe Devo Male Jomze Sanve Dai Kanje Gibe Sonje Zonka Lozan Dabe Shala Esawan De Mime Zeve Deje Jere Zedime Kimbe Wombo Jampe Devo Male Jomze Sanve Dai Kanje Gibe Sujian Zonka Lozan Dabe Shabla Esawan De Mime Zeve Deje Jere Deme Kembe Wombo Jambe Yan Devo Male Jomze Sanve Kanje Gebe Suje Zonka Ba Lozan Dabe Shalwa Esewa Ende Balde Anzave Lama Erimbo Dage Jiwa Beme Densho Lai Kade Chembe Gone Jesu Kuzon Toige Ngodo Ezedo Se Bade Anzave Lama Rinpo Che Dagi Nyinga Pime Tensho Kate Jimbe Gone Jesun Sudaya Timoye Ngojoye Zedo Se Pate Anzave Lama Rinpo Dagi Nyinga Pime Tensho Kate Jimbe Gone Jesun Kundo Bambo Mardo Jun Parasho Masa Mjeme Shera Pare Mage Mega Namke Ngo So Ranje Geshe Cheye Nulon Jeve Yom Loy Chaze Loy Te Yata Gade Para Gade Para Samgade Bode Soha Dea Thaya Gade Gade Para Samgade Bode Soha Dea Thaya Gade Gade Para Samgade Bode Soha Joy Shiwa Mete Nime Gendan Dewa Tempo and Dojin Dun Zojun Dojin Den Jai Den Dele Sho Sai Shi Ebe Shi Chun Shi Metoda Re Ra Lin Shi Nin De Gen Ba De Sanje Shindo Mete Yuwa Ye Doge Namda Shinla Che Barai Sho Yidaim Guru Rena Mendela Kane Yata Ya Eme Sanje Shindo Tsugi Chonamla Chancho Bardo Dane Japsuji Dagi Chijur Jibyo Sonam Kia Dola Pinje Sanje Dubarai Sho Chodon Tsugi Chonam Lai Jancho Bardo Dani Japsuji Dagi Chijur Jibyo Sonam Kia Dola Pinje Sanje Dubarai Sho Chodon Tsugi Chonam Lai Jancho Bardo Dani Japsuji Dagi Chijur Gibyo Sonam Kia Dola Pinje Sanje Dubarai Sho
Simje Tamje Donde Tojalanama Yanta was over Soja Gomorbe Tobacha Tichi Tabisha San Guru Shilux Matasunji said and December Cheers.
For the welfare of all the sentient beings, may I able to achieve the fully enlightenment so that I can benefit all the sentient beings. So may I able to listen this Dharma teaching in order to benefit all sentient beings. So from here onwards, like I'm going to read the almost 2 pages as the oral transmission of Lamrim Chemo.
Teyang ben de pa u ba de ba we jin lo so be so no de do ne she ro su she ro go ja la ba ten de je se je je sa na ba za la la de je tra ge wo je se wo ye su zo to de do yin de te she ro de ne je ye do ba sha hong bo rong rong yu ji chi da la la wa tu ji ve yi ji ve se wa de ba wa ji ve shi ya zi ji ne te so ji o bo ye she na la wa she ro wa ni zu yi she ro jin go yu no ji ba da ba ji ba ta te ba so ba na ji ve se na la zo ve chong de yan de le ba shi ni ni mo se ba da yan de be ve ta ba ke ba ju de Tela sobe ombo namba yang ombo xin la lo yi xe ro zo ti yang kong de be de zhong xi ni me se be zhe la ke wo jie xie zhe xiao zhe sen be lo be be long ma bo la xia ji jia men ji be dong bo le long ba ta nga jie la xian ba se be be nang de wo men jie wa ne xie de jie de yo ko de yo ngo de jie wa le yin be xi xi gu ba tong 现在就这个现这个同这个这个这个那么大把些话的是把他们随便就现在就到你。什么丢诶，什么丢诶，老周到东安街没找把的吧？现在就看了中，现在就看了中这做好比现在把些，对了，中别咱们这咱们在做，咱们在咱们学校的，这可能也多难的。上台就搞的说那个这边做了这边现在就这么些吧没，别就说我有时他把些我的现在啥的现在明天什么那现在我没什么那不是解决呢？瞧就是我让给下紧张呀，明天新的人那不没得包，他我嘛我这就我得了没觉得。让个东的别在这么没着呢，老的是别中，这边中西边天天是天马龙骨，对吧没吧？西边东的没着没结果是东，现在那么那么那么现在那么那么那么大，随便有的也别会那边就是现在别对龙不说那个立即些吧，那么是忙随吧些。种植几个些吧，俺现在我说就长那东西，就是觉得这个什么的，那个啥的这个说的吧，天天上的这个说的吧，做啥你吧，先不就是行。南国那边是那么这么也就马上吧，也那么现在我接受给我弄的用这。给我这那有点现在当天别明个我这边的小师们联系了我，可以我就办。对呀，我对我们这我那边现在就那么多这边对应了的，现在一定用的东想把修车讲对象就是叫我们是这样，甚至也对我老我们这边引起修车。因为你这边修着了，我就让我也讲个节，那边给我来没这边，来了没我，搞我这边我的要我这边没我来，要有没我当中先不我就这边的要我这一趟的给几家没有我的，现在我这边他都中说这边一个现在我就我比现在这样。我们有那经常都被Geshe就是什么到上新月这边就我们我样，现在我用的这个那么就写了篇写说这个写我上班了，对小周对小周用说帮我都我写写，对我没事人写了，两个或者这边来了没我们来了没马当。个说到这样大英灭当这东灭以外，但是我到有的这个这大英不能。现在这个现在我这个别那么这些说些样像我都来去年到面子了，工作我也当样决定，就是听。现在我到这么这边没的没的，现那么就这样，么这个也不去不去不去，到时没搞不得，现那个就现在这不说是说也不定他，也不定他把呢。你别工作我到我我们个就是这么多现在我现在问个我也是那我们个现在全部到我样第一嘞，那我到这搞不了就个啦，这就那也不嘛啦变这个我样嘛，就是说我的对不起不。可多我你个了，那个没着我的要把那个天那我看说这个你娘子的把你说着上学这个功夫说了推没别忙不了，这样开不了没个我现在这些我那这现在没完。 Geshe了解明给我了，他也将第一节能下到送入偏就了那个蒙的约将。光把明个我写了几位写问题你写了几个我老那没为我老那没为弄到那有的他几位写了这就为你破了我前面被忙着写了来的这不能说就我写着写三节。这些到处到处，比如说中面说就是说他们这样的所以马路他们讲，天天写了有了我的有用这的，他那我就在这儿说到做了没做了，明着心也把当。用说就是老当我说那么那么个去就是些来唱他的。namdara gota dang jade ben ben na ba te dang de ye Geshe tu shin ye dong para shi dong para ye dong shi ba te da ta je she ra te li so she so ta gong zhe de xun zum de ke de le da kan je di ge na pa jin ji dang pa jin zhou lan da你pa jin tang bo nga te la san da she ra pa jin la ya de ba o she ra pa jin la ya ge ene 파진 쪽은 나래 셔라 파진의 초도 줘봐 있을까 그래서 거도 뭐 저살 저기 어디 티 셔라 인가 파지어서 되레스.
So Gisela has just read the auto transmission from page 213 from the center. Like similarly, wisdom is also crucial for others faculties such as faith. So starting from here till the page 216, which is like the end of this the compendium of perfection. So until the end, all arises from the power of wisdom. So until here, and as in last teachings, we have covered about like explaining all the other perfections or six perfection, and among all that, without having the wisdom, that the five perfection is like it won't make clear explanations or understanding about how to complete the other perfection. So it shows explain about the importance of having the wisdom aspect. So that's why like we have just roughly cover on this perfections of wisdom, the importance of the perfections of wisdom.
어제 강의들 다 놓은 보여 그죠? 제가 진짜 솔론데다 니 셔라 공제 락바 텐덴저 세지제서 나서라 렌제 타고 진 세워시 수수통을 다 연된 뒤 셔라데니 제시 줘버시 홍보 지금저 홍보 로너 유지 지달라 투시 이지 세워된 바 신스 건지 대수고 다 그선 저기 도차래 건지 짐발라서 왜니 퍼지 더봉가 버디 아니 셔라 용어도 제와는 때냐도 로버드 셔라기 심베인 사디 셔라디 양언즈 제다 메다부터 셔라도 빈 말이 동유도 셔라도 다 간지 디시나 아니베 다 그게 소제와다 들다 예야고들 세예들라 리모나도 차고 나신시네 에는 퍼지 더봉가데 야고들 레디 이나 텔레비게 다 인 리모트 찾다와는 쇼든 제반 주그레스 어디서 저기 소소 통라 대다 연된 트 싫어든 제주 로버시 쓰러 너때 소소 통라 다 연된 트 시다 파지를 동문가들 싫어 면을 종요도 싫어 있는 투용이고 되게 해봐시 연된 트 싫어든 제주 로버시 제가 파지 동문가들 상예사 줘봐시면 셔러버지를 다 셔러버지 랑가와 말에 이 그래서 셔러기 제가 동유도 비셔는 어디 라레고 시다 이는 동유도 셔러디 조고 오레스 어디 거야 그래서 this 배도 보세요. 엉보라는 이게 기다라 취시 이 세와 된 것이 시스 데려다 Sheramen Angborana, make Angbo, does Gaga, make so do Naya Datu or Ganga 2 years. 2 years depend young Saturday in the make Tongo or the make the Yangza Tomo, Yangza Teria, so even job dog and Doya, some shito or Marva. Sheta, what the color of the Jurgis in Yishiva Jogo, Yishiva dinner, Jogo and the shut up the Yishiva do Zures, because it Datuna. Tapi was mad, any change your so to the Tonga Shuna. That tell us Sungu Shidor, Sundu Shadi, Nashida in a Megishiva to the Tonga, tell us some remote. Call you doubt to the Shishing Morris. This is what. Tatanaji, Yago be remotion double. Be Shitag Sashi with the knees on the Megdan, the Tona, and this Yiki the Samadang, make a Toma. Call Yonde Yovada, did Hakumara, she got Duk Marva. She had a Yonde Gaga Pita, saw the what in there, she said, Shed of the Hitter, Geshe Moris, that is a only Juju that Valley shares or this Gaga Chick battery, said that the Korang that low boy you could tone what in there is.
Here actually we roughly covered last time, even though I didn't explain properly because of lack of my vocabularies. In regards of how important these perfections of wisdom in other 5 perfections, like especially like when we right now when we mention about this, the perfections of wisdom, which means the perfections of the wisdom realizing selflessness of being or person. This is the one that really are important if you really want to use all the other 5 perfection in order to lead towards the stages of the path to realization. Then we have to need the perfections of the wisdom that help to realize the selflessness of a person. With that wisdom can lead. And also in general also like in order to achieve, as we have already explained, that even in our 5 these senses or faculties, that if you don't have the proper wisdom behind, then it cannot distinguish how to apply and to recognize properly. So that's why it explain about, for example, like even if you see the cliff behind you, our eye can see the cliff, but whether it is dangerous or not, its eye cannot distinguish this. That means your main wisdom will help us to understand that, oh, if I go there, I will fall down or will die or something like that. Only the wisdom will help us to recognize this. Otherwise, the eye itself cannot recognize. So as about the sound, maybe you can hear beautiful or rough or harsh word or something like negative or positive, but only the sound itself, without having a wisdom, you cannot distinguish those things. Only because of the wisdom behind that will help us to understand those and recognize that what are things that has to be applied or discarded because of the wisdom that will help us to understand. And so as about like the precious things, like you may see gold or diamond or those precious things, but if we don't have that wisdom behind, then we can only see those things, but we cannot recognize this is a precious or not something. That's why only with the wisdom eye can help us to distinguish these two. That's why even in our worldly mundane life also, that we need to have that wisdom to recognize those things and understand what has to be discarded or applied or understood and then applied or discarded. So that's why it shows about the importance of the perfections of wisdom.
Teaching the Teza Omonana, Sherab Yizuinas, Sherab Yugoyan, Jimbada, Las of Senators of Jonathan. This word, Tanda, and Yul Judas Onshinga Yul Juna, Jungdo Shat, the Penny Shiva Raleigh within a thing. Nijizan Tezo Nasata, Tiva Ombongayara, Tiva Ombutuno Sherab. Dina le share young was doing, share young was and a share around a young lost Koyaka. Yes, and share you go in a Jibata, there were share of the Yuna 디 그때 돼서 다 비지 돈이도 샤르 믹세 고야스민도 강제 애니베 세준 소야기 표현도 무슨 예미다 내가 너희 바로시와 강가를 지한테 그 교용 강가 해야 돼 해라고 해고로 와 해라고 좀 하시나 당번에 봐 애니 짐바 동머리 세르면 송머리 랑서 가야 하모거나 애니 걸 주야 요 말와 제가 팀에 인자 당보에 뒤에 강가 그게 교용도 표현도 예미 강가 해라고 내가 해고로스 디시에는 애니 뉴모데 세바 해라고 내가 해네 애니 비게다 방랑저 쉐바이나 애는 유모바 세와다 연대표와 디시라 케바시노 야보 연구를 했어요. 다 셔럽스 매시 평요르다 시가지고 아니 지금 디바시 요버 세야서시 디레시 소소서를 쉐바이나 엔테 깽에를 때 제는 샤시고 그 공시와 멸사로 그래서 셔럽 공도 제와 세와디 셔럽 연나다 공로 기도와디 셔럽면 엔 코슈소를 하지 마도 요 말했어요.
So also again explain about the importance of wisdom, or the wisdom is the main thing in our in to use all the five senses or the six perfections of any aspect of our daily life. Like for example about the five senses that if we have explained that how important it is. Even like right now, like in ultimately, of course, we have to have that the wisdom realizing the selflessness of a person and phenomena in order to achieve that. But in general, we don't have to use that in all every aspect of our daily practice. So in general also, like about the five senses also, we need the wisdom aspect of wisdom aspect, and also in the five other perfection. So we have to have that wisdom, because without having a proper wisdom, then there's no way we can be able to distinguish what is the pure, like for example, the generosity, that which is pure not, or it's just for worldly or not. So as other the perfection. So that's why in order to practice even in those things also, we had to have these the wisdom, perfections of wisdom.
어디 텔라소베 다다 로모라 텔라소베 엄부 남바 양 엄부신 러이 시럽도 디 군데 연대 정시베 뉴무스베 저 개와 주스 자 다기 도모데 엄부가세 엄부데 너도 무서 엄부가 가서 무슨 저 메가 엄부 나 엄부 나 시바 디게 들어와 디게 되게 애니 메가 통고리 자토 제대 강가 소고르데 얘는 될 양의 정도시야 강가 이 해발라래도 왔어. 어디 나지 단데 대소 엄마가 뒤 나래 애니 배조 정도시에 비게 지하게 공도 되니 셔럽 시고 그랬어. 어디래. 이제 엄보실 로이 셔럽 조스러와 로신스데 자나 데레다 이기 로 조로 엄보 다당도 지당장 언시다 이시는 이시조 언시도 통화될 언시고 거 통화 좀 뭐그 정도 시야가 네바 가는 요 말와 시야다 디 중도 시야디 이 시야라고 지고 그래 이 시베 시고 어디 나시 엔다다 대소가버티 비 중도 일수 시야디 이 시야라고 주 시고 그래시 시야라 중고데 너 이네 시야라 요나 이네 좀도 요데 시야다 이네 비 좀에서 파파 요데 수조 시야기 비 랑도 제토라다 디데야 랑도 지베 시야라 메나 इन जीवा तंगला मरले तंग पे पेयोदे इन मादव निमे खागो मरे तोंदु जाले खंजे तोंगु पे जोवा दो ता सांबा दे कुंगु छबा खंजे गुयो खंजे जेबा जो चिक ताना रे वता खंजे दे दो रो खंजे पे नंगु गोमो चिक जब तेना 어디 조 कुंगु छबा जुने ने बे 뭔도 제점 줘야 저 엔타르 줄줘야 상지 형배 상지 줄줘야 저 어디 छबरे 어디가 아니 그 성우는 철소 양에 디네즈시네 아니 동거와 디세다 디세와 디응고지 연대 정시베 뉴무스베 쓸라 켜봐 주세다 어디 헤라디 야고여나 엔 냠슬내야 림바데 비게 공주다데 엔 조와데 조 가가 야고이셰서나 엔 비게 냠네디 뉴무스야게 냠 카르라나 메타버지 고바야나자 연 차세베네 그래 디에 가가 비게 니모고 녀몬조알에 켜버 주그레스 때즈 마시나는 코 트셔버 주그레스도 배는 어디 됐어라 가르사 But that Jidi Simja Tamjel be Rimboshi Kone and Big did a Jimba Jimbale and this you are Karsa. Tell Jimba Jimbale and Karsa. Some year publication and then payment share said what did I Karsa in a long door get nearly and jumps the lana little dog big cover here Jora. What is she? You must say it truly cover yours. She said, this is the poor guns put on la Nimu Nimbo, Shusha, Yungora. What is what? That did a man, and then lad will go, you don't go, Cargona, Magunda, Gomazan, Pig, Nimu, Noya, the Tedekaka, Yungo Marwa. This do a Karsa. The Lama Jusung did Karsa. Nimu Chazama, similar says I do. She did it was in the guard of Johnny. England similar be in the say in Julie Nimu in the Shung Sandro, Nimu Chazama, similar say, would nail and whatever get it. But this is what Shang Kunjo gave us a good Doje gives us, Shang Doje gives us do. The page the two young Lamas Mentos on the Resha. What did it song do?
So here actually it's expressed about by having a wisdom or not, by having wisdom, it helps us to distinguish those what are the faults and qualities, and help us to like increase good qualities or like eliminating all the afflictions and those things. And that's like here the compendium of perfection that states among the various faculties of faith and so on, wisdom is chief, as the mind is to the sensory faculties. With wisdom as Lord, you know what is a fault and what merit. So you are skilled in method of eliminating afflictions. So this express about like even like having an ordinary main mind and then faculties. Even having other senses also, but without having a main mind, like it won't make a differentiations, and like and also so as in the perfection vehicle, like 5 perfection, without having a wisdom, that we cannot be able to distinguish. So, right, for example, even it states about like even if you want to do a generosity, like even without or lack of wisdom or proper wisdom, if you are giving a $1 of generosity, but this like with the lack of wisdom, then it may not create like amount of merit, or even maybe it will mislead us. But if you have the proper wisdom behind, when you do even $1 of generosity, but by to whom you're giving, with good kind of motivation you're giving, and with these like if you include with properly, with wisely, then even $1 of generosity can help us to accumulate the countless amount of the meritorious imprint that will lead us to the path to realization. And also, if you want to do like a meditating or practicing on impermanent also, without having the proper wisdom, maybe because of lack of wisdom, instead we maybe fall into the existence of nihilism or nothingness. But when we have the guidance from the proper wisdom, then we truly can practice properly about what really impermanent means or permanent means. So this will help us to understand and then lead us to the right track. Even for example, if you want to do prostration also, without having proper wisdom and understanding, then it's just like you're doing a regular like kind of exercise, but it won't lead to achieve any kind of accumulations of merit or so on. So only with the understanding and with the help of our proper wisdom, then even doing a prostration, then it really help us to accumulate the huge amount of meritorious imprint. And it's all because of the the wisdom that really help us to understand and act accordingly. And that's why there's a sometimes they call like lack of wisdom. Even if you may do generosity or giving like the whole universe, the wealth that cover the whole universe, and if you offer, but if you have the wisdom behind, and even if you do one dime of that generosity with the wisdom that supports that one dime, the accumulations of merit by doing one dime with the guidance of wisdom, that will accumulate more meritorious imprint than lack of wisdom, and you do the whole wall of wealth as like generosity. So that's why that they call that how important about even in our practice also, and that's why there's the one Tibetan master or Jangchuk Dorji Gyalpo or some one of the master, he said that by reciting mala, like you may recite, it's like a lack of wisdom, or and reciting any prayers with the mala, and like even you recite so much that your nails may worn out, but there's no realization. So that's why, like, if you lack the wisdom behind, and even you recite the mala and wearing your nails out also, it won't lead to any realization. So that's how the important about having the wisdom in order to practice.
我的小学生吧，是罗摩的下棋叫这种，小学生吧，这种现在开始，按照罗摩的下棋呢，去比咱了，那别个，美运动不，在行动那些现在别个开始，这了没搞没吧，让别个熊开始，当了熊猫没吧，让当的别个俺姐姐咱的没吧，我的是我他媳妇俺媳妇当有这恰当的这。别个早些月当，咱个节目修当是俺爷天天几个嘛的是，让当兵呢，我下的当的，我的刚刚当错嘛的是呢，上班几个嘛的是，我第一刚刚的开始中国人，呢，大没不到，现在的到的你中国人是我，大看见，可是我们就我的没为可是啥，让下来了，可把希望你弄都没什么不有人就是啥希望，我这是我的。城市什么都是，别个下的对的，咱们可把这个给呢，别个得了呀，那当到别，头周末干的这些紧张，那弄落了别个，开始啥，这个那也到不起话就要的包头是啥是吧？这那要的现在包头也的，那这些个人，这些的，上边，那么多人中头嘛的，山那的，那俺爷的是吧？那熊把这是啥是吧？我现在这个呢，我的就话被引，就把你引了。是我这个刚刚没有的，现在个这个呢，到的地里是。现在司机过把这，现在个司机过把是的上这嘛的，但俺就的上级往的去玩的，司机过把先小娃的知道他们家了吧？现在他们这些帮的现在俺的小娃的也帮着他们这个这个，是把可以东西，因为。시대 장바랑서 타바토 에니 니랑 시대 오 되게 구바스다 되게 다 대신 되게 구바를 비례더라 단다 니랑 시대에서 좀 샤르고 뭐도 연대 샤르도 뭐 됐어 거다 시시바스코아 동이야다 이메시 어디 통 샤랍지에서 온 시대 뒤통 샤랍지에는 최점 신기 가서 최점 신기 돈도 주베 this or head of the corner, head of the Sudum Sunyata, Jimato Ganga, any Shendon to do by Duvesa. Driver in the true number talk by Sheva dance. What is a head of the other in the Jimbato Ganga be talk by Sigdoa? What talk was it that or that country dancing Karsa Yamon Dry or take Malin and pick a draw to it and the talk by Sigora. That didn't pick a dembers on Jimata in the Sudum to Sumbaina and the quad. 가까이 코아지야 제 평균을 뭐 대신 가까이 타베줄도 탑지시비 로마르와 나발 타바선 데르다 가지 또 이도 회셔서 신에 에는 스루소 집어다 가리 신나에는 디지고 타르바 타지고 조르고와 또 이도 회셔서 마지나 에는 집어다 스루소 가지고 가서 참나 에는 코에 조도 메시지 딱 모두 하면 조도 로고 뭐 대연단 좋아요 말와 매다 에는 스루 number tha shia dang se number tha se de chedum ya dang be ge de wa ta pin chedum song wa yin so ju ji ba yin na 그런 무엇이나 저는 거다 인성도 더 내도 더야 교섭이 되고 그러와 제 돈이도 해라고 시빈 그 털바다 인 저주스비 탐지시비 줄려 저거가 여기 해라고 시고 그래서 다 뮤즈버 앤 스베 좀 해라지 또네서 뮤즈버스는 컨트롤 뮤즈버 좀시 스베 용된시 해라고 또네 심듀에서 단다 इन कॉन्ट्रेक्शन इन खर्चा दुनिया बाशी बात दुनिया में वैसे सेवा करना इन खर्चा दिल्ली बाशी युगो रहा चेता दी थोड़ा इन तो लॉकडाउन शिगो मारिस वर्दा कंजे सेना शिगो मारिस इन पैसा हेंग पे सोशल पे खर्चा इन पे कॉन्ट्रेक्ट लांबा ता दिवो जब इन खर्चा सिक्सो मारो डिरेक्ट शुना इन तीक पे लेन लो पे नियमित दां इन मालोन पे सेवा को भी पेयों तो शेरा की शेबा यिनजा इन लॉकडाउन शिगो मारिस लॉकडाउन से करे तेरवा स्विच लाभ जिग ह्यूज पानी शिया शारिशन लॉकडाउन शिगो रहा what is your ता जिम्बा ता दिगन औ जिग तो को तो या साबा येना औ ता या गना जिग गुरे बे तन दिसा मारिस या जो छु कागा जो मारे वो 저 सेना शिगो शेदा शेरा की तो ये दा को तो येना 뒤에 가가 기획시도 말이지 록조스야 뒤에 이 등에 이제 메트로 바다스 어디시도 자는 집바다 셈나요 말이 이 세준송 저 가지 예조도 가지 깔리 잡나라 엔텔이야 메가와당 데려 말아 가지 텔 용대다 쫑도 용대 약부 해서는 이 콜 냐즈랑자 콜 이게 가지도 자 메와 샤고로 다 데려 쫑 여보 마게 봐 지금 샤고르스야 셴이 제가 신도 이 깔리 시부카오시 이거 교용의 야고 마시에 자네 이 거사 안 페요데네 용도 말아 어디서 용도 말이지 인 세나다도 롱이고 용도 그래서 파는 컨트롤을 시스템으로 파래 로야다 이 짐바르도 세나시야도 롱이고 용도 그래서 그러다 셔럽 요노도 용고 말이지 수토고 말이지 셔럽이 걸러 좀바 존주 좀베 히 리버 히네 될 좀베 람지 사주 샤와다스 데 셔럽이 걸러 좀 존주세야 되는 것도 들어와 지당 깨지시나 누구 사고도 존주시고 말해 디스가서 그러다 시당 대지당 폐기도 현 존주세야디 가르 장고에서는 베게 저와 세디 돈달이야 총케지로다 hingat되어다 거기 디 돈들 깔린데 쉬고 땅이 시대야 될 그런 존주시에 깨지지로와 뒤때 존주시에 심하리스 제가 존주 가르시 가르 존주시고 어디 존주시 힘하게나 इन देवांग के करसा लुंगजुदा देवाल ड्रॉपनी सीधा अदि त जोंडु लोबार वासे त जोंडु सिबे हिबारिस सेदा शेरा दे मेना इन जोंडु खावासिगो हागु मार वासे गोदा करसा तेला जोंबे lamji छे छेवा दे मेदा साजु से दे रवा वसे दी दिगे या हागो जोंडु खावा जमगो मे इन सिस ने कॉलेज ने जागो जे इन 사주 셰스데달 그 걸사 가지세 거다 누바치아 통거리세 거로 체와 당 디코난이 동안 네비 산데이 가와 디코난이 동안 네비 산데이 가와 가데 쇼니 리그베스라 템비 리그베스라 데비 셰라 유로바 셰베스 어디보다 다 디레 디코난이 동안 네비 산데이 가데스데다 디코난이 또 ene hine to topson da hine hinja devase gadese aji topjo mare odise warda samde tekona il ton neve samde gadesho ne rigbe tsula dembe rigbase de rigba yangda rawa cheda rigba yangda tsula tene entegane to ene samde du peyon da ene lelata tzu ngemi tshene duya diswa de sherab gi dobar shewai bes o diye ganga lega de shinge zu로디 헤로 시고레스 지조가 용스 타바시에 니 헤라들라레디스 어셔다 디레송다다 지조 강가베 용스 타바시에바 시드자나 단디 용스 타바데 데시고 말에 벤나 대강이 삼베 센디 삼베 말레바 any seshima hidetangi maleva. Simje tangi to zov sangi komotawa chai did in the Jinzonga should in the Tequila to be here the no Dijuro, this the young Tawa Shigoro, this way. Rale, the Hira Mr. Number Shaker now. Changju Simba, Rang Shachin Jang, Menji Sheng, the number meta bara, To Manjo, the Della May, Jay Dang Xiao, did it. She the daddy, you know. Here you mix out the Chiba Cheva Chut, you and don't you the Hira, you know. In the churches of Rang Shachin, and the Menji Shing Jeva, he could tell ya, because Dungenda, today, got number of high maris. The Tom Mouse said the Sudo, Joa, tell me, Tom said, not done happy. God the Kona Luigi Matan, she would be a chimbo, don't she would have some dear Naji Lombatre Yomaris. Yant go colors a Luton took Maris to be Shumba Yomaris. I'm going to that because suddenly he said, what double day to race over.
So here about when we have the proper wisdom that supports all the other perfections, like even when we do generosity or giving, then like if it's supported by wisdom, then we don't feel any kind of pride or even pride or like because if we don't have the proper wisdom that doesn't support giving and other perfection, then there will be always some kind of like pride and like easily something easily can be discouraged and like it can be saddened that we can be able to continue to do like even the generosity and so forth. So that's why when we have this the wisdom that supports, then it cannot be affected easily. So we will be humbly like doing generosity properly, and and only with these with the help of the proper wisdom that guides all the other perfections, and only because of that like that will help to do properly. Even that if like a person who truly have that proper wisdom behind, then even that I may not be able to do the such amount of generosity or holding morality or the perfection, but it won't easily discourage them. There will always something that will try to give some spirit inside to encourage to do more or in order to improve more if I don't have that capacity or that to do such thing. So that's why even there's the guide to Bodhisattva way of life is says that in regarding of those practice Bodhisattva practice, that even though that I won't see the what do you call the realization, but I can feel the difference. That's like you can feel that you have that courage, you can feel that confidence, then you can feel that I have that encouragement to do such practice, even though that like if I may not have that resources or ability or those capacity to do, but when you have that the wisdom that you have that courage, you can feel that you can, even though if I may not have that resources. So that's how in Bodhisattva way of life. And then and also like if we don't have the proper wisdom behind, then anything we do like generosity or holding morality or other things, there's always kind of doubt. Am I doing this thing properly or clearly or purely or not? There will be always some kind of superstitious by doing this, even that I may be, whether I can able to achieve realization or not, or even higher rebirth or not. So there will be some kind of doubt and superstitious about doing such thing. But when we have that proper wisdom behind, then that the generosity or holding morality, that instead of like giving pride and those things, it will try to give you encouragement and will lead to the realization. So that's why it will help us to stop from having those doubt and all the superstitious thing, because it will help us to understand clearly about those perfection in order to practice properly. And also with the help of this the wisdom, even that when we practice about this shamatha or vipassana, or like in order to achieve those realization from like what they call the bring what they call the bliss in our physical or mentally, or peace in physical and mentally also, only with the help of proper wisdom that really help us to achieve that. And regarding like the other perfection also, like even though like we may be practice, but in order to set that perfection into a right intention or pure motivation, only with the help of wisdom that will really help us to set that perfection into right intention or right motivation. And uh, normally, like when we do out of some kind of truly existing phenomena, but with the help of wisdom, it will help us to practice that. This also, when you do, not we do something with condition, but we do with unconditionally, without believing that all the phenomena that doesn't exist of its own, everything is interdependent, and in reality is all the independent origination. So without having that thought of truly existing phenomena, or and so with this understanding, with the help of wisdom, can be able to do other perfection also. And and also with this, like otherwise if we lack the the wisdom, like for example, especially in order to practice the perfections of the other five perfection, lack of wisdom realizing selflessness of a person or phenomena, then it will only lead to maybe to lead to achieve the fortunate rebirth or liberation or the like higher rebirth, but it won't lead to the fully enlightened, or the bodhisattva level, or the fully enlightened. So with the guidance of the wisdom realizing the emptiness of a selflessness of a person and phenomena, that will lead to the bodhisattva bhumis, and then fully enlightenment. Otherwise, if we lack those understanding of this, the selflessness of wisdom realizing the selflessness of a phenomena and things, a person, then maybe it will lead to have a fortunate rebirth, but it won't lead to the higher state of enlightenment or the bodhisattva bhumis. And also with the help of the wisdom, anything we do, like generosity or those things, we can do unconditionally without having that attachment or some kind of stinginess or miserliness, that we won't have those things, because at the end it's just dependently originating, it never exists by its own. So we can be able to perfectly balance in that, and also that we never expect something in return, because once we expect, if we lack wisdom, then anything, even when you do generosity also, we have something, the expectation behind, like something in reward or some expectation behind. So we can be able to do like even the generosity or so forth, like unconditionally, without any expectation. And so as about the morality also, like sometimes because of the lack of wisdom, when we follow the morality, maybe it will easily discourage us, because there are so many other things that we have to follow, do, or to do what not to do. It may be, it can easily can discourage. But when we have that wisdom, then the wisdom really help us to understand the situation, and then we will always try to encourage ourselves that the purpose of holding morality and other perfection is not only for ourselves, but for the welfare of all the living beings to free from the suffering. So that's why even it won't discourage us from like holding morality. And so as about the joyful perseverance or joyful effort also, like with the lack of wisdom, then we normally misunderstand or misinterpret, like if I have to do some farming or housework or business or thing, like when we use all the effort, sometimes we use that, the joyful effort. So because of the lack of wisdom, we misuse the divine word into this worldly concern. So by right, like when we use the joyful effort with the guidance from the wisdom, it's like you do have that the hard work or joyful effort towards all the virtues, all the divine activities or the virtuous activities, but it will never try to mix up with the worldly actions and the transworldly or the divine actions, only with the help of the wisdom. And then so that's why having the wisdom is worth working hard, because it have a fruition without expectation also. It has a positive fruitions. But if we lack wisdom, then any actions in our daily life or the five perfection, it doesn't worth that much. That's why it's worth having wisdom behind. And so, and then so that's why in these the shamatha and vipassana also, only with the help of wisdom that will lead to the path to realization and the higher enlightenment. Otherwise, lack of wisdom, we try to practice the shamatha and vipassana. Yes, it will give some kind of mental peace and physical peace and calm mental calmness, but it won't lead to the highest state of realization. So in order to use the shamatha and vipassana properly, in order to achieve the high realization, it has to be guided by the proper wisdom. So that's why, like it says, the compendium of the perfections. Once Bodhisattva have opened the clear eye of wisdom, even when they have their own flesh, without a thought, they never feel high or low about it, as if they were cutting a medicinal plant. So that's why once you truly have that wisdom, even the cutting of your part of your body and you offer to somebody as generosity, like you can't even like feel that attachment or pain or something, but you, as if that you're cutting the medicinal plant and you happily offer them.
Oh, this wrong. Sidumutron, London Sibet on the Canton, the Demalo Demi, Sibet on the Medomujus, Theodore, Chauju Seba to any big wrong to the any big Sidum Somalas of Tender Humor, that is the word. Similar to the mother. London Sibet on the Canton citizen, and Chauju Seba to any Carcoya Dunga to Ganga Kong Chene, in telling you, and I take a big. Because Pellan in the Shenda Dunga Yabako, in the Shenda Dunga Dunga, in the Picasemki or Washita, Tin Jidemal Dumabese, and Jigdens that the Chidan the Simjin Jidini or Chidan Jigden don't the Simjin Jigdensi or Simjin Jiden to the end coil Pig Jazolia Noya Muwashi or was Tichidan. Any because Geshe direct serum to the Mia, the Taji movie, is what that because serums on Jibatan Karishena, those on the Jurmadojele, any Shemion Wonder down, any Nili Tarvata Doyak, today Jukoyan Shigumaris, Taji the big, and those on you do what is actually.
So that's why, like the Bodhisattvas, when they practice all the perfections, like generosity, holding morality, and all these things, they never will practice for their own selfish realization. They will only practice in order to benefit all sentient beings, like unconditionally to benefit all the sentient beings. That's why, like all the other perfection that they will never practice for their own benefit. And so that's why it says that, and the second line quote, and intelligence one do not practice ethical discipline or for their own aims. They see the flaws in the prison of cyclic existence and aspire to release the entire world from it. So of course they do not practice it for mundane aim. So that's why only they see the faults of all these worldly thing, faults of this so that's why knowing this all the negative things and all these negative actions and imprints and delusions and defilement. So that's why they want to free all the sentient beings from the prisons of this cyclic existence, but they never think about their own realization. So that's why they unconditionally practice for the other. And also, Bodhisattva, they never even practice to lead everyone to have a worldly pleasure or worldly achievement, but they sincerely practice this the perfection in order to achieve the living beings into the realization.
디다 히란데만 네바도 세베디 네메 신디 뒤에 롱부 소나 레이 제바나마 세바시 네 존지지구 셰왕에타 셰라로 있잖아 동신족스로 디스워다 아니 그게 전주 선바이네 근데 코알 비게 가르사 용대다 코아디 zon라나히 통고르디 신의 심진 동디야 아니 코에나레야 삼기디 겨알레니 아니 심진 동두어 세러와 요 네바타스 제가 다디 코알 동동 엔다도 코에나리 비게 코 심진 남도 비게 찍바시네 아니 삼기 겨와시 도디드잖아 아니 디 가르사 누구 말베스 코알 누구 말바시 디 근데 누구 말이세 대체 가르사 대세월다 심지어 돈이다 아니 가르사 이 동네 가서 냥나 냥스도 디심께에다 디수야가 심지어 돈데 얘네 가서 맨날 깨봐 잡으세요 얘네가 아니 까지면 담지해요 디세다 아니 코알 채널 누구 말이세 원다 신디 대체 다 신디도 랑고 쳐나라 레이쳐 나마 세바신 존지지부요 왜 대세다 pen langbo che dije ka shibu thui de de en ko shona de dodi kina de khawatan ko lega na zo ku su go ro o tin na ye shera ge de yo de ji ye na en ji da ko jo de jo si go ko be zon ra ta go de shena ko ya na le ya sam de jo le ba de gya yo ma en lega khar de shena shi ta ya o tin de ko lang je thi ba ji wa de sta lega khar ge ko su ba ta kumna chedumsona 가지 파지도 가발라나 아니 가지 배 차다 조소조도 와차요레스 랑지 뒤되어 되네 고쇼나 디기리 도디기나 디기리 양 셔자 파타나 디기로 오데스 월 티나히레스.
So here the other third the paragraphs that quotes injury done to the wise is not harmful because they possess the good quality of patience, like the best of very tame elephants who are patient and many different tasks. So in this, sometimes that we may have like a question that, oh, if we are born in that swamp, then how can we help others? Because you're already already in the swamp, or you're already in that swamp. So that means if I have that all afflicted the desire and emotion and all defilement, then how can I able to benefit others while I still have that defilement? So in that, like some of the bodhisattvas who really dedicated to practice in order to benefit all the sentient beings to be free from their suffering, they wish and they are purposely born, like there's a saying that that even that I may be born in the darkness of those defilement and those suffering for the eons and eons, I still want to be born there so that I can be able to liberate all the living beings from those darkness of sufferings of samsara. So that's how they really dedicate that in order to benefit. So that's why even they may have to, in order to benefit, even they may have to face all the challenges and difficulty and all these things, but they are wholeheartedly diving into the ocean of samsara to with patience, with all this, and then like without losing patience or like discouraging, that they willingly dive into to benefit all the sentient beings. So that's why this example is given to as in the tame elephant. So once you have the you have tamed the elephant, so like it's like a wisdom, like you have sharpened your wisdom, and other the five perfection is like untamed. So if you have sharpened wisdom, then it's like a tame elephant that you can ride, or you can let them carry the load and do any kind of work wherever you want. So if you have tame wisdom, then other perfection, you can ride on that and then lead towards the other, the virtues, the higher purpose. So that's how, like, once the bodhisattva or practitioner who has that practice of the wisdom, then the other thing they can ride easily on anything and can lead to the realization of practice.
What is that? Because Zunji Jibu Shiva Nivets, Sherato, Janan, Tunjin of Sera, Shadow, that Damita Shera Masiv, that Chanju Sim in the Pento Marava, or direction, that Paji Tamonga, Zunji of Shevina, Ede, don't you have a Sheraman, and Sanji Gomotop to Yomara, Shedan Yevet Tassig, Zunji Jibu Shiva Nivet Taro, Sherato, Janan Tunjin drops. That deal Paji Tambonga Yanin Tigana, in Chanju Sim Yoga, Diga told you the Shero Yuna. In Sanji Gomotoris, at that Tonji drop said Demendo, Sanji Gonzira, Sinjitari Tondi, Sanji Gomota, the Tonshi the radio. I said the Tonji drop to race, Sanji Gomotoris. Here at Damita, here I mean Sanji Gomota, Yomaris, but did it, Kanji.
So that's why these two sentence that quotes perseverance by itself ends an exhaustion. Itself ends in exhaustion. If aided by its ally wisdom, it achieves great purpose. So here it generally express about that any the perfections that lack the wisdom, then it can easily can exhaust or get tired and cannot prolong or continue to practice, because we can be easily get tired or discouraged, and then the defilement will overpower and we cannot be able to continue. But right now, which this in this perfection, which shows is not only wisdom, but it needs the wisdom realizing the selflessness of a person, and that wisdom, because right now we are talking, it's about a great purpose or great achievement, which is not only that fortunate rebirth, the liberation, or those things. It expresses about the full enlightenment. So if only by having the wisdom realizing the selflessness of a person, then with the guidance of this wisdom, then can be able to achieve the great like achievement or the highest achievement. So that's why like it expresses about having that wisdom.
Oh, this is something they got shown them. Johnson never Shimbu Baji, Languri Bitsilla Temba, Jumara, Mara Yela, Cheddar drop chairs, or things at dark on yet. Or they share out the Damju de Mena. Any this was that thing in this big, he needed to draw in. Any he needs some big Karsa, Yidin drop dinner. And until ya no thing in the La Shabit, any Dejas like you or the Jenny, Conjicanda. Thing in the anybody emotion the Jodra, the ones that using emotions as your mare, or did they share of the mena, and using emotion about Jodras or Sharis. Teach it the lamb called to war, said Tara doesn't show a long room or Language vessel them by Jumara Mara Jumara, Yellow Shetan drops. What did they any big long to say you might share of me was Mavina? Anything in the good of the show, in a any big, they don't drop your maris. Tarva Tanji of Hayan drop to Maris.
and the last the paragraphs, which is from the Compendium of Perfections, which quotes, "How could the supreme delight and bliss of such meditative stabilization be established in the mind of crude people who rely upon reasoning that has led them to a wrong path that is polluted by the great fall of accumulated errors." So here also, like it also expressed about that lack of wisdom, even that we may be practicing those vipassana and shamatha, which is supreme delight or and the bliss that we gain from the meditative stabilization, even though because of the lack of wisdom, then eventually that will that there will gain some kind of pride and delusion. So that will, instead of achieving realization, then we will fall into the wrong path or the wrong direction, because eventually it will be polluted by the great defilement. So that's why it's expressed about, even in order to practice vipassana and shamatha, in order to practice in a right direction, must support with these the wisdom. Otherwise, at the end, like because of we have some realization because of this shamatha and vipassana, that we think that we are realizing something and feel that there's a delight and bliss, something like that. So it may fall into the right direction, because we pile up. When we go more deeper and deeper, lack of wisdom, then finally that we create so much negativities and defilement, eventually that we will fall into the wrong path.
This is because Gyeltsen Gyeltsen share up down Denby. Mingo Joe, this Shanson Nikilam, this was that conject. Chidan and Deja to the Bonjaris in any Nimusu Bonjarawa. Yina la Shanson Brigata, Papa to any college with the Shane. Any put on some doing surety. She and Deja and Yebet and Hugo Maris. Said that the Deja and Yebe Mugo, the colors in the share of the top share, yes. But this was Jovan and the young Mundoan, Sheragulan Debbie Twin. But this year, taking the Simji you don't want. See the Simji you don't want big Tony Shamba Shuta Junks. So Simji will become Shamba Shuta Boyer, the eating ones who were watching down. So you want you guys Altan this word that you don't want that Deja or what he gets here with the raw. Said that the Tikona Yakoto Negajina, and the Simji you don't maybe Shamba Shuta Boyer. Hina Tina and Deja be levered of San Hugo Morris. What this word that? Shamba Shamjam Mother Jill, pay till Shasm levers and Humoris. That only Madonna could Chamba the other year, the Shabajam Dola in the Jan Jenny. She had a copy with all the shout or Chadu race. Mindrewata, Simsi doing music, Yingsha Shuta Genasi. The Yingsha go to the Simsi Bugger doing now gone in the Yingsha Shuta of Jiggerity, Jigger and the big Yingsha Shuta of Jigger, Yingsha. That's doing it into a second, what the young end of Yungura Tessie, or young end of my name, because some Kuzuto was the drawing of Shagma, the Shigota. English should have Kazikena, Tadoya, in the big Landolia, Tonya, any big, don't you shoot Cheru or this word that young end, that conception done, doing it to test some of that anything Buzuto as Yama, the Yama, Shigota, shoot like Euro, Yaja. Young the girl Mujo Mevadans. What said that? Did the Ninja Shujaboyana in the Simjin doing it in the yard? Timosity known in the source of a Lam Gombala Metrois and my name was Mari, Toa competed to race. Lilo the Cadre, Lilo Mevata. Gawatse Mevata, there, and the Sim Tere. Jidata Simjin Tom board of Shit Yuna. And the Yel Gawasham Yungora. Gawasham Yungora, Dina, and the Gawati is simply Yayo Shito Marisawari. Just a Gonza de Benata, Tijara, lamsan niba chimura do da karshida mingshora chigidi hasan gatani chokmuzu siado jamare odisiwa kani yayosena otide kai chigumare siwa tarawa simje gawasi mebata 당년 시험부 윤이 대야 로여돈 이게 메어서 당년 세두잖아 예리사다메 당년 들어와 다 대화대도 당년 현은 되그레스 내래 대시나 인데르 심지에 돈 계직장 인데 가르사 메어 디셔라지 가든레스 심지에 동시아 류로 말이 심지에 다지 당년 세두 가르에서는 제가 랑 녀와서 말하다 파르마스 지거로 당년 세는 레디 그런 톡이 따지면 내디어디 양도 심지에는 그게 들어가지 여왔더니 버르고 말이지 심지에 돈을 깨지 양 여와매와 이 치도 그랬어 어디 해라디 대야 해라 그랬어 대다 dob중소 드비 해라 드비 이 해라기 고비 셔로사 대다 dob중소 드비 해 해라기 고비 셔로사 어디다 가데 셔나 뒤에 개강가 해라디 노로 세단 에디 냠스 가르라나 페 람드노와 세 레바 용토그레 세고레
So, um, in general, normally like our desire or attachment or those defilement, actually we have to overcome. But to those who are the great practitioner with these proper wisdom, who practice with proper wisdom, or who have the Bodhisattva vow, who really wish everyone to be free from their suffering, for them, like they don't contradict each other, which is like even they are supposed to avoid it or overcome, and then the other like the no attachment, all the practice has to be applied. But for those who have the proper wisdom, it doesn't contradict. That's why like they really hold as like a they can control and balance in between those things, even though something has to be discarded or overcome and some that has to be applied, but they don't contradict for those great practitioner who has the proper wisdom. So and this one also like which shows about like the here I can read this one. From the still they do not fall under the control of sensory object. So there are like who have these they don't fall on the sensory object, like even like they are mixed with these worldly, like all this when you do for example like when you do generosity, when you have the compassion towards all the living beings, there are some the object of desire, there are some a beautiful object, but instead of having that true desire and attachment, without having that, without making differentiation between like the beautiful, desirable object and undesirable object, they can easily, like equally, can practice the love and compassion for all the living beings, even though you may encounter with their some object of desire, but they never fall into that, and they will skillfully can overcome and then practice properly. And also, and this one about in order to practice, it also shows about like without having the emptiness, realizing the separateness of a phenomena or person, with these, then even when we do, there's always something that we can hold into that. Maybe like like some maybe they fall into trap or that we may be differentiating between the bad and good, or maybe that's why like it says like only with the help of emptiness, the wisdom realizing emptiness will help them to stay in the balance in between these two. And even like some people, for example, when we have some kind of like when we try to help others, when we see the sufferings of others, then we get overwhelmed and then may not be able to continue because the suffering on the other side or oneself is too strong that it will easily dominate and discourage us from practicing the like generosity and so forth. So only with the help of those emptiness, realizing the selflessness of a phenomena or person can help it to balance, and with the help of wisdom, and together with like even if somebody when we do something like when we practice, sometimes because that practice is so nice and pure, and because of that, sometimes our pride and ego may boost up, and we get over again too much hyper, and even that also not good in when we practice. So in order to stay balanced in between these two hyper or excitement or like discouraged by too much sufferings and overwhelmed with this, like to stay in this balance with the help of this wisdom realizing emptiness or the selflessness of phenomena, or wisdom realizing emptiness will help us to stay in this balance. And only with these, when we stay with the help of wisdom, when we stay in balance, then all these the realizations and good qualities can be able to arise and realize from there. Otherwise, if we don't control these two, then we will never be able to achieve those realization and quality from our practice. Finally, I'm done. We'll stop now here. If you have any question, please.
Is the wisdom that Gyeltsen Kappa is talking here is the same as? Is it the opposite of ignorance? Is it the same as non-ignorance? Is it a virtuous mental factor? Is he talking about the wisdom of realizing selflessness? Because at the very beginning he says that this is not what he's going to be talking about. Mm-hmm. What wisdom is in the paragraph? Yes, all right.
Kurangi kejet di danda sheraf sing di damito be sheraf la gore be ana sheraf sing di tigi lokcho di ani di marikpa sing chil na di la di lokcho de marikpa sing di rebe sagido
sheraf sia di sidirang rawa sheraf sidita 갑도 전에 피제 그런 로조 말을 하는 게 그래. 배는다 지마동야 저기는 표현이 시에서는 다 지마동야 표현 마시는데 말을 그래도 와. 어디래 더더더 상계 토고 말세야 뭐 되게 저 에는 류지마땅세야 저기 디셔도 돈도 해서 와. 지단 메타버도 해라도 랑도 해로 잡는 데 요래시.
Actually, on the wisdom, like which here it has a different quotes, different. It can lead to different meaning. Wisdom, for example, about generosity. Like if you know what is the benefit of doing generosity, and if you know clearly, then that's like you know clearly. Or this one part of wisdom. And then if you don't know, you are doing generosity, but you don't know what you're doing, then you can call ignorance, or sometimes it's called the misknowing also. Maybe they can use misknowing. And then on the higher level, there are like giving your body, and like generosity as giving your part of your body or body. Then in that level, like that wisdom, just knowing itself is not enough then. That wisdom become like the wisdom realizing the selflessness of a person. So only with that realization, understanding, then you can be able to do the generosity of giving your body. So there are different level according to your practice that wisdom changes.
At the very beginning, well, it's a follow-up to the same question, but is wisdom a virtuous mental factor or not?
That the ko the jo nge la the ngamane the dot sar chachidande and the sheriff second the and give some reversa give gi sem reversa gesem
Ale sheriff senata sheriff senat sheriff ganga gave semina me da jorda. So sheriff said the kawa kazaka go karisa so jana la ji go kaji namji sheriff ju go 다 sheriff the namji said the la ne pi go go mo do. Sheriff on the go mo go do mo.
There's a thought there, and it says that if you just by itself as a wisdom, then it can be both, like to do business or do daily worldly thing. Also, you need to have that wisdom to differentiate those things, but that may not be the virtuous one. But in regards of differentiating between the Dharma and to promote your spiritual practice, then you need to have the virtuous wisdom.
This is going to be the sheriff sena this is going to namju said the kanji jong shin ge ji xiao so the jong said that ko lega khawa hin le dra wa said the sheriff in ji mi ji yo sheriff namju said the ingu is amari.
So normally wisdom, which means that can distinguish, that can understand, or that can recognize. So recognize in a good way. Mostly they try to see in a positive way, but that can be used in many other fields.
It's not one of the virtuous factors.
Not necessarily. Yeah. But it can be worldly also.
When it's a non-ignorance, is this a type of wisdom? Non-ignorance is a virtuous mental factor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yeah, non-ignorance. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
When you're talking about wisdom, you're talking about the wisdom that understands emptiness. And are you saying that until you get to that point, any practice that you do, like the 5 perfections, is really incomplete because it lacks the wisdom understanding emptiness? And I mean, we still have to engage in those practices to accumulate merit, even though it may not be the perfection of merit.
Tanda the sheriff singing the ane kasa pena jinsonga ane the nyamne jedi ane sheriff the dameto be sheriff ge mazinna ane the jinsonga the thar machimba chagu warwasa jezang ta konsogi danda nyamne the danda karchena ta dameto sheriff ge simio mare ina danda jinso jedi danda ngado senam sa chedo digi ane danda jinsonga la the nyamne jedi direbe sigdo
This yo konzo zan pen to ma this go ma da na karchena konzo jabjor di dagme de hera mena konzo kapsan rango de pego marwa odi me konosi go de go hera de la to jinso go ro som so go ro jedan de konzo ganga da parden de den ro cha go de ti na ni hera de da dangzi nya mo so zu yin se go ro ati me ji hera konzo go de go.
Actually, even like in ultimate practice, like of course that other 5 perfection, that and the wisdom, when we apply wisdom, that in a higher level of practice, it has to be, firstly, the wisdom realizing emptiness. Supported by this wisdom realizing emptiness, then if you follow the other perfection, then it's a complete form of the perfections. But in our daily, day-to-day practice about other perfection, when we practice, doesn't mean that we miss the wisdom part. We do have some the wisdom aspect of our practice, even though it's not realize the emptiness, but we need to have that wisdom aspect in other, because it is supporting each other, because otherwise we will never know what generosity means if you don't have some amount of wisdom. So that's why like it is supporting each other, but in a highest level of practice, then we have to have that wisdom that realize emptiness and then follow other. So as a, everything is actually, wisdom is always there actually, because otherwise it won't, because it supports each other. Thus we will never know what generosity means.
So what Geshe is saying, that even if we don't have wisdom realizing selflessness.
Yes. Yes, even though, yeah.
Along the same lines. So even if we don't have wisdom realizing selflessness, if we're practicing generosity,
yeah, wisdom is
then wisdom is
degree,
there.
because it's distinguish, it's understand.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, my translation or interpretation not that. I'm eating half and translating half. That's why you're not getting all. The old man eating food.
The thing is, if I may, he says at the very beginning, in how to begin the generation of wisdom, in that section, Gyeltsen Rinpoche says, since I will explain the benefits and faults of having or lacking wisdom of reality, selflessness in the insight section, I will not elaborate on it here. So he's not supposed to be talking about that at all, right? That's what he's saying.
Okay. Koran tanda gengi tanda sherap ke gothang ko ne tanda jeru muchi na tanda dil shegi me chela something the shineda something ko the geshin ke shegi tanda shegi me chel la sonsa and geng geshi ke ba do she sonsa and then dina geshin ke ba do shegi do asa de
단단히 가르치는 혈압 그런 무언도 루던도 시고 낙동 줘야 되고 그래. 혈압하지 낙과서야 되고 단단히 오모지고 시고로. 네 혈압 그런 무엇가 있어. 낙과서야 돼. 혈압이나 이제다 뒤에 파지 조그 나니. 이 혈압하지 줄다 오모지고 혈압하지 낙과요 말에. 흉피셔 낙과야. 그래서 네다 혈압하지 예라도 그런 약불에 있어. 쇼를 떼어라던 하시러 와. 지금도 이 혈압 공도 이어가지고 민놈도 시급은도 혈압 생각 봐야 돼. 다 그지.
Actually, here, yes, whatever Gyeltsen was quoted, that it's going to explain everything in detail in the other session. Yes, he did exactly, because he didn't explain anything about wisdom right now. And it's only like, it's like praising the wisdom. You're only praising the wisdom because in even the Buddhist, God to Buddhist way of life, and in here also, it expresses how important the wisdom is. You're commenting on wisdom, but not explaining about what are the different type of wisdom and what are those things. Realization, it doesn't explain here right now.
this is this is 파진 중간 파진 상만 가서 인디 치자 시고로 와. 어디 시야가 데려왔다 간지 상기는 다 타와도는 다 간지 가서 당매도 오고 당매도도 땡인지 때 뭐지고 그러와. 다 땡인지 때 뭐지고 팬도 말이야. 인텔리아 최랍디 남지 당매도 별로 되고 그러와. 저 당매도 별로 얘는 땡인지 때 뭐면은 그 내들어서 뺀다 사배지라 엔 처음에 세워를 샤야는 사배 차고 샤야는 콜 니바카이 용 동마르와 어디시 다 사바자 아니면은 그 처음에 세우면은 그 니바 동마르와 제가 그게 다 너무 개선되시다 다 로스는 되게 이제 remo야 버리다고나 ene teze chome ribayena en chome kono sebo jikse en lakba mewashi nizo gogodwa lakba mewade samden de gogorwa ene chome sebo de herab de gogorwa 그 chome kono kaga dede는 시초조지는 그 네가 통하지 요마르와 어디시도 그 승리 고고도 하시다 그 이수도 파지 타만이 지다디 시고르와 미다 시고 기젠도 다다디 시고르 ngak바지도 코치어서 파와레스 제가 코치어서 파와 예자다 그 로시고 기젠도 shago 마레 그러 shago
About wisdom, about like why the Jerum, which is quoted out, that it's going to explain in the other session. That's why, like, especially out of this 6 perfection, there's a subdivision, 2 subdivision about this shamatha and vipassana. Why that he has quoted differently with as a subdivision? It's because in order to achieve realization, that we need to have like kind of union of like method and wisdom, and then also the single-pointed meditations, and then penetrative insight in order to achieve. And only with the help of this penetrative wisdom, penetrative insight, or the meditative equipoise and penetrative insight, that will realize the emptiness, the selflessness, emptiness realizing emptiness, or no, wisdom realizing emptiness of or selflessness of phenomena or person, or like so only with these then you can be able to achieve higher. So that's why the reason that is quoted out is these are one of the important aspects in our daily practice, because this one, if we don't explain separately, then it's like a without having the proper meditative stabilization and penetrative insight, it's like a lamp. If the lamp is windy, then it won't. There's no brightness. It don't like you can see clearly. So like it needs a stability of your mind with the meditative stabilizations or penetrative insight. So also at the same time that are the obstacles that try to distract from seeing the reality. At the same time, the lamp itself has to be clear enough. If that light or the lamp is not clear by itself, that means that the practice we do or the wisdom itself is not clear enough. Then also that cannot see the reality or realization. So that's why the reason of explaining separately is to recognize those things so that you will have the clear without blown away by these afflictions, and you can practice with the stability and penetrative insight, and also that with the quality of proper wisdom, then your light is big enough to see the reality that really help us to achieve the selfness of person or phenomena. So that's the reason that it's been quoted out. It's roughly explaining. Okay. Lama gombo jitsen jambe yang lai cha zi lo gange lo de dimne tende nida nanda rase jinye denge jije ziche nige tukra le banze ganda sebe zen rai mare mendo emdo nye geze dozo kin la embo che danse yen la endo jo yang den son zhu drai che zhu ni mo ni lo le ge cha zhu de ze je ma re min se dong ye ni wo jin ye che ze re de nam de ne da che sa che da se yen de le zo ge ze tu ye ko chu zha chu da chu ni gen de da le min se jam be lo yin de Om Mara Basana de 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 Mara Basana Om marabazana di 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 de ze de ke 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 ra ve ze ge da le de mo men ba rap se ka da de je shon lo ye do ba ye lo de bo be na wa zen do se lo de ye zo ye zhong pe gra ke san bon ve ju de men ba Tenpa zin lai wang doi ge ju be cha nye chu ken cha la se wan de ge wan de nyur do da la ma ya san je zhob jo ne do wa chi cha ma le de sa la ngu bara e sho e jan cho sen cho ren bo ma ge pa nam ge jro ji ke wa nyam ba me ba gon ne gon do be wara e sho e ton ye ta wa e ren bo ma ge pa nam ge jro ji ke wa nyam ba me ba gon ne gon do Ora sho sa she ben she chun she me to dang re ra lin she nin de gen ba de san je shin do me de yu wa ye do ge nam da shin la che bara sho kan re ra ve kor ve shin kan de ben da de wa ma le jun ve ne che re se wa ten zen ja zo ye sha be se de bar do den ju ro che ye da em go ro re na men de la kanaria ta ya me